What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, I'm covering the 3 most common fishing mistakes when you're fishing during the winter. I hope you guys had a very Merry Christmas. Hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully those buyer's guides worked and you sent your loved ones some links and you got the your desired fishing tackle and gear that you guys wanted. Hopefully you guys are putting that stuff to use. But first and foremost, Merry Christmas, and hopefully you guys had a great time with loved ones, friends, family, and you had a great day. So now that we're officially past Christmas, it's wintertime. It's cold, it's frigid. It's like a high of 42 today here. We got some storms coming in, but today I wanted to kind of do a refresher course or a refresher video to give you guys some tips and help you guys avoid some of the mistakes that I've made along the way, especially fishing in the winter. Now, we understand that it's not the most desirable time to be out on the water, right? You have to layer up, you have to wear warm clothing. You do have those cold ice storms, those cold storms. But if you can get past that, we want you guys to be successful, right? You're investing your time, you're investing your gear to go out and brave the elements. And at the end of the day, we don't want you to suck. We don't want you to blank or not catch fish, especially when you're out there in those bad weather conditions. So just leave it at that. So avoid these 3 tips. Number 1 tip. I know I am super guilty of this. It took me a while to learn this. In fact, how I learned this was when Matt was guiding. Back when we still lived out on the West Coast, you know, I'd be fun fishing or maybe pre-fishing for tournaments, but Matt was a full-time guide. So he was up at the crack of dawn every day, you know, guiding 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And we'd go out a lot of times on the same day, and it was obvious that the big fish were eating in low light conditions, even though it's cold out, right? Even though those water temps are the coldest they've been all year, those big fish still like to feed in those low light conditions. So I was guilty of it. You know, I'd sleep in, I might eat breakfast or drink some coffee or whatever and get out. You know, maybe as the sun was coming up, I was launching my boat, but I wasn't at my first spot before that sun came up. And a lot of times, even in the wintertime, those giant fish that you hear everybody talk about, you know, winter fishing is a great time to be out on the water, right? You don't have a lot of competition. You don't have a lot of boat traffic. You get to fish those community spots. They're community spots because they produce a lot of fish. But big fish, we all hear those giant wintertime bass. You know, it's one of the best times of the entire year to catch giants. And I was missing out because I was starting a little too late, or I wasn't fishing late enough in the evening. I wasn't, or even nighttime. Nighttime, wintertime fishing is amazing. You know, there's been nights where Matt and I have had multiple double digits in a single night. They just eat in those low light conditions. And for me, you know, I just wasn't out there at the crack. And so it was nice to get a different perspective to compare our days. Yeah, I caught a lot of fish, especially when that sun got up, it got warmer, and then I could target those shade lines and stuff where those fish, I knew, you know, that shade line shrinks as that sun gets higher and it places those fish still in those good ambush zones. But I wasn't getting the giant bites as often as his clients were. And that's really where I learned about it, talking with Matt and just going over our notes and comparing our days. If you're gonna go through the trouble of getting out when it's a high of 40 degrees, maybe it's a low in the high teens or down in the 20s, you're getting out super early, you're braving the conditions. We want you to not only catch fish, but we want you to catch good fish. So if you can, get up a little bit early and be on the water at the crack before the sunrise, be to that first spot before that sunrise, and you'll have the best shot of catching the biggest fish. Now, I'm no scientist. Matt and I, we've you know, decades of experience just kind of bouncing ideas and thoughts and everything off of each other. And what we kind of come up with is these fish don't want to expend a lot of energy. They want to hunt or feed when the odds are best in their favor. And being a bass, being an ambush style predator, low light conditions still put those odds, low light conditions in cold weather still puts those odds in that big bass's favor to be successful without spending a ton of energy chasing a bunch of stuff down. They can still kind of be lethargic until the time comes, and they have a lot better success rate hunting or feeding in those low light conditions. Now, with that said, say you launched before that sunrise, say you were out your first spot, maybe you got a big one or two, you can still follow that pattern as that sun rises, because that is going to cast shade. Like I said a little bit earlier, as that sun rises, unless it's a cloudy day or foggy day, that expands your low light fishing time in the morning. But if you have a clear day, sun's up, now you have shade lines. Even at night, if you're fishing in the evening into night, look for docks that have lights on it. Look for launch ramps that have bright lights, and you will see that those shade lines are pretty, they're apparent, right? They're there, and that's where those fish are going to be, in that shade line. So if you fish in the middle of the day, go look for, still run that pattern, look for those shaded banks, those bluff walls where those fish can be successful ambushing from. Number two tip, number two mistake. A lot of times, and this video might be a refresher course. We did this video last year as well. We just wanted to kind of remind you guys, because I am guilty of making these mistakes over and over again. But number two mistake that a lot of anglers make, including myself, is fishing your everyday confidence baits. What do I mean by that? Because we teach all the time, fish your confidence baits. We are in the month of December. Towards the end, these fish have been fished for all year. You think they've seen a Keitech, a 4.8 size Keitech? You think they've seen a 5-inch Senko? You know, some of the most common baits these fish have seen for 12 months. Get away. Yeah, I mean, a 5-inch Senko is one of the best baits ever invented. A 4.8 Keitech is probably one of the best mid-sized swim baits ever developed, ever made. Caught so many fish. But this time of the year, get away from your confidence baits and fish the extremes. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's take swim bait fishing, for example. I'm not gonna go out and throw a 4.8 Keitech, that average sized swim bait, my confidence sized swim bait. I'm gonna fish the extreme. So I'm either going super big, that Savage Gear, that thing is amazing, swims extremely well, or I'm going super small. The extremes, right? I'm slowing down, I'm going super small or super big. Gonna get a lot of bites on this, hopefully. Typically, get a lot of bites on that guy. Occasionally, I'll catch a giant on it. It's fun when you're fishing light line and such. But if I'm fishing for those true giants, I'm going large. I'm going with an 8-inch or a 10-inch swim bait. Something that puts the odds in my favor when I do fish that shade line, or I do fish the crack of dawn and I'm on that key spot. What do you think has more drawing power? This or this, right? This or a 4.8 Keitech. What do you think those fish have seen 12 months out of the year? They haven't seen nearly as many of these. Now, if you are on a fishery that stocks trout, you might have to go with a little larger. Maybe you have to go with a 10-inch Savage Gear or a Huddleston or a Hog Hunter. You know, one of those more realistic wedged style swim baits. But to my point, don't fish your confidence stuff. Don't fish the stuff that these fish have seen all year round. Fish the extremes. Now, it's more than just swim baits, right? Maybe it's glide baits. Maybe you're comfortable with throwing an S-Waver 168. Maybe in your fishery, this is the extreme. Maybe that is large. Maybe you're used to fishing a smaller swim bait, right? But if you're in a fishery where you're used to throwing the 168, jump up and go with the Bait Sanity, the Trout Explorer. a lot more drawing power than this. This has a lot more drawing power than a small swim bait. But if I'm slowing down, that's when I really, and I'm light line fishing. It's just a high sun day, slick calm. We kind of talked about this in some videos through this month, but I might have to go with the little guy. But I'm not going with a 3.8 or a 4.3 or 4.8 Keitech, the most common sizes, because these fish have seen that so much. And again, we're fishing so slow. These fish have a ton of time to look at your bait and decide, do I want to eat that? Have I eaten a 4.8 Keitech 10 times already this year and got stuck, 5 times or whatever it may be? I might choose to go, or that fish might choose to go with the smaller one or the larger one. So again, when I talk about fishing the extremes, I'm just talking about switching up the size baits that you're throwing, right? We talked about it recently in a finesse fishing video. We talked about downsizing the profile of your jig, right? Instead of throwing a big jig, throw a smaller jig. Or, just like the swim baits, throw a bigger jig. If you're looking for that big bite, throw that bigger jig, drag it slowly, work it slow, but fish the extremes. Okay, so that's tip number 2. Get away from your confidence baits. And a lot of times, going into the winter, we want to go out and we just want to catch fish, right? So we're gonna go throw that 5-inch Senko. We're gonna throw that 6-inch shaky head, straight tail worm. We're gonna throw our S-Waver 168 or our Keitech, our 4.8. We're gonna fish the baits that produced bites for us all year long. If you want to catch the biggest fish in your lake, or you want to get bit at all, try going with the extremes, either downsizing and going lighter lines, smaller baits, or upsizing and increasing your drawing power to try and get those true giants to eat. Now, with that said, I did mention it a little bit, but when I talked about this guy, right, we talked about slowing down. Now, that doesn't matter if you're throwing a swim bait or a drop shot or a jig, right? I showed you this guy right there. We showed slowing down, downsizing. That applies to your Ned rigs, that applies to your shaky heads. In that finesse fishing video I did a week or 2 back, I talked about downsizing your worm. All those things will increase your chances of getting bit this time of the year. But as we slow down, I like to downsize. Light line puts the odds more in your favor to catch more fish. And then if you're going for those bigger fish, upsize and fish those larger end of the spectrum and those extreme size baits. Now there are plenty of baits on the market way bigger than this, but you guys get the picture, okay? Last tip, or number 3 mistake that I often find myself making or have had made it's getting windy. Storms are rolling in. Giving your baits too much movement. Again, referencing that finesse fishing video I talked about, if you're a drop shot fisherman, don't be sitting there and shaking your worm and having it looking all crazy and just a spaz down there in the water. Down there below that surface, that ecosystem has slowed down. You don't need a worm down there just flapping and shaking that rod tip all the time to give it all that action. So, tip for you, talked about it, then put that rod tip in the water and you will see those ripples. You will see how much action you're truly giving that bait. Whether it's a Ned bait, right? You're popping it up and shaking it too fast, or a jig, you're stroking it too much. You just need to drag it. Pay attention, be cognizant of how much movement you're giving your baits. Now, this can be applied to all aspects of fishing. It doesn't have to be just finesse fishing. Maybe it's a jerk bait, right? You're not out there just ripping like crazy. You're gonna change your cadence. Woo! You're gonna add time in those pauses. So maybe it's a rip, or a twitch, pause. 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 10, 15, 20 seconds. Rip, 1,002. Slow down your cadence. Don't give that jerk bait too much movement. Okay, same thing with your crankbait. If you're speed cranking, throw a crankbait that has a tighter wobble. It's not a real wide wobble. Same thing with your swim baits. Even on your A-rigs, I'm switching up my swim baits and it's blowing like 20 miles an hour. Hopefully, I apologize guys, hopefully we can deal with this in post. But even if it's your swim baits, you don't want a real wide kick. You know, I talked about this tail right here just a little bit ago. That has a real subtle swim. You can go extremely slow with this swim bait down there on bottom. You can sit there and just grind it, right? Matt's talked about it for years. If you think you're going slow, turn that handle a little bit slower, just enough to have that tail kick. But also the actual bodies of your swim bait, whether you're throwing a little underspin or a little, you know, just a little finesse swim bait on a guppy head or an A-rig, I'm going with swim baits that have way less kick. They have more of a shimmy, more of a tighter kick, if you will. So on my A-rigs, I'm going with, well, this right here, this is these, that's the Mayer. I have that's the 2.5 as my dummies. And that is the 3-inch as my main baits. That's that micro A-rig. It's a really small profile. I mean, here it is compared to an S-Waver, right? It's not much longer or bigger than that. But my swim bait, I'm not going with a bait that has a ton of body roll and a ton of kick. It's too aggressive, especially because I'm fishing slow. So when I say be cognizant of the movement you're giving your bait, that applies to if you're a jig fisherman, right? It applies to so many different techniques. I'm downsizing my jig, I'm going smaller, but I'm going with a trailer that has dead action or more of a natural looking action. I'm not going with something that like a Rage Craw or something like that that just has a ton of movement. I'm going with something that is more dead action, more realistic, because again, I'm fishing this thing super slow. These fish have a ton of time to investigate, stare at it, and look if they want it and decide if they want to eat it. Go slow, go natural, pay attention to your movements, your bait's movements. So if I'm throwing an underspin, I might throw the Damiki Armor Shad. Great little swim bait, really good in the wintertime, okay? So one of my favorites, if I'm just throwing a finesse swim bait on a, man, nose is starting to run, it's getting cold. It's crazy how fast that temperature can drop in the wintertime. That's why it's really important if you're out on the kayak or maybe you're bank fishing or even in the boat that you have extra set of layers of clothing to put on, gloves, beanie, something like that, hand warmers. Be prepared because these frigid elements, they can change in a hurry and it just gets cold. But getting back to one of my favorite finesse swim baits, especially in cold water, you can creep this thing ultra slow and it still has real nice subtle action. That guy right there, that's little Megabass Spark Shad paired up little guppy head. Doesn't get much more finessey than that. It works. So whatever technique you are, whatever technique you're fishing, whether it's a jerkbait or an A-rig or a jig or you're finesse fishing, a drop shot, a shaky head, Neko rig, just be cognizant of how much movement you're giving your bait. You don't need that thing acting a fool down there and just shaking and dancing all over. So anyways, guys, I hope that helps. Wintertime's a great time to be out on the water. Make sure you layer up, make sure you have, cold weather gear. And once you're comfortable out there, man, you have the lake to yourself. You get to fish a lot of times places you don't have to play bumper boats with or fish congested areas. It's a great time to be out there. And then again, fish those extremes. Be cognizant of the movement you're giving your bait. Fish the extremes, whether it's small or big, and get out early. Fish those low light conditions for a shot of the biggest fish of your entire season. Guys, I wish you the best of luck. We're here to help. That's why I wanted to do this video again. I know it's a refresher video we did last year, but again, wintertime fishing, you've already put in the time, you're putting in the, you're investing your health and your just in the bad weather. we want you to be successful. So think about those tips, think about those mistakes, and try to adjust your fishing to avoid them. Guys, as always, I hope this video helps. If it did, hit that like button. Matt and I appreciate the support. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. Turn on the notifications, click that little bell. That way you guys know when we are putting out videos. Matt and I, we put out 6 videos a week across the different platforms. We do 3 long teaching videos, usually, or long format videos, usually almost always 1 fishing video per week. And then on different different platforms, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, we're doing shorts or reels or something like that. But always trying to give you guys some tips and to help you guys have more success, right? Tactical Bassin, helping you guys catch more and bigger fish. We've been doing it for years. Hopefully, you know, we see the comments. We appreciate the support, guys. It's great to hear all the success stories. We get in those emails and those comments, and just guys that are having luck out on the water. And that's what it truly is all about, right? Helping to give back to the fishing world. It's done so much for Matt and I. Early on, all the way through our adult years, it's been an awesome ride, and we appreciate you guys so much. We're coming to an end of 2024. It's been a great season, but again, just wanted to share those common mistakes that I've made myself many times and help you guys avoid them and have more success out on the water. Guys, as always, like I said, appreciate the support, and we will see you guys on the next video.